some breaking news just into our newsroom. In the race for the Speaker of the House, we are told that Republican Kevin McCarthy, according to some Republican members, he has apparently dropped out of the Speaker's race. And here now with more on that is Nancy Cordes on the phone. Nancy, what can you tell us about this?
Elaine, I can tell you that GOP Republican members were just as stunned as we were. They had gone into a closed-door meeting, the entire House Republican Conference, to, they thought, select their next speaker. And it appeared that Kevin McCarthy, who is currently the number 2 in the House, he's the House Majority Leader, easily had enough votes to get a majority of House Republicans. Certainly he's had a couple of setbacks this week, but he still had a lot of support, partly because he wasn't facing all that much in the way of competition. And once they went into that meeting, members say, McCarthy announced that he did feel that he was the right one to lead the conference and that he was going to be postponing the vote. The reason that this is so stunning is that as recently as 8 o'clock this morning, he was at a forum making his pitch for why he should be Speaker. And he has been making that argument, to members over the past week. There were, as I mentioned, some pretty significant setbacks for him. The House Freedom Caucus, which is a group of 30 or 40 of the most conservative members, came out earlier this week and said they won't support him. They're backing someone else, Congressman Dan Webster of Florida, because they feel that he best promotes their conservative values. There were concerns about whether McCarthy was able to be an effective mouthpiece for the Republican Party after that slip-up last week where he said that Hillary Clinton's poll numbers had suffered as a result of the creation of the House Select Committee on Benghazi, something that Democrats and Hillary Clinton herself seized on to say, aha, we knew it. We knew that this committee was political all along, and it certainly gave Democrats a talking point that Republicans had been working very hard to prevent them from doing.
And, we certainly heard Democrats echoing that, and Hillary Clinton herself talking about that setback. We're seeing someone at the microphones now, Nancy. I don't know if you can see from your position there, but while we wait for that to begin, I was going to ask you how that particular setback, let's go ahead and listen in. I'm sorry.
Took the floor and addressed our conference and said that he would no longer seek the position of being the Speaker of the House. I can't commend him anymore. He put the country, he of course put our party in front of this political future. He's a very humble man, and I respect him fully for what he's done.
So he's done. It's not like, oh, I want to go build more.
No, Kevin McCarthy said that he was not the man to lead, that the country wanted a new leadership and a new face, and I can't respect him anymore for what he's done today.
Was everyone just totally shocked?
We were all in shock. The room was in total silence, and really just in total respect for Kevin for what he did in behalf of our party, in behalf of our country.
Did John Boehner seem surprised?
John Boehner was very surprised. We were all shocked, and that's why we're going to delay these elections until such time that we have time to deliberate and have a chance to really think and pray through this, and I'm sure the right person will come forward.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Nancy, there we heard from a Republican member of Congress the reporting that you had given to us just a moment ago, the shock really being felt by members of the GOP as they heard from Kevin McCarthy himself. Before he spoke, we were talking about the setbacks that McCarthy had faced, and you had mentioned the political tumult that had emerged after it was. There was a comment that was seen largely as a misstep on the part of Kevin McCarthy, that there was the politicization of the investigation into Benghazi. How much of that, I know we obviously are still still absorbing what has taken place here. But how is that received, Nancy, by other Republicans as that all broke and as that story developed over the 48 hours, and something that is still continuing to reverberate even now?
There was intense frustration, Elaine, I myself was surprised by the number of House Republicans who came out and openly criticized Kevin McCarthy, saying that it wasn't just a mistake. He didn't just slip up, but they said that, that was terrible and he needs to apologize. Normally, you see party members sort of close ranks around one of their own, particularly their future leader, and so that was a sign that there was some unrest, some unease with him taking over as Speaker, partly because the whole reason that
Nancy,
Speaker
I'm sorry
Boehner,
to interrupt. Stand by, Nancy. We have Darrell Issa at the microphone.
I think it's pretty obvious that all members of the delegation of the conference were shocked. Kevin McCarthy had the vast majority of the conference's confidence and votes, but he's made a decision that I believe he couldn't get to 218, and as a result, he's taken himself out of the running in favor of a candidate who can get to 218, and I believe he's going to be the most influential voice as to who we can get to 218. Kevin McCarthy remains our leader. He remains a steadfast part of our leadership, and clearly the man who had the most votes by far for Speaker.
Will he stay on as Majority Leader?
As far as we know, he is absolutely staying on as Majority Leader, and as I said, Kevin McCarthy will be the most important endorsement for whoever ultimately becomes a Speaker.
Does that have anything to do with that Walter Jones letter about possible indiscretion in the numbers bad?
I believe that the leader will have to speak for himself, but he said he wasn't the right person. My understanding is he felt that he could not get to 218, and he wants to make sure that whoever does become Speaker obviously has the ability to get to 218 on the floor consistently, and that's his reasoning.
Paul Ryan, is that the only person who gets 218?
I believe that you'll have to ask the candidates that may emerge. I don't believe there was any candidate today who could get to 218 among those who had declared, and I believe that's the reason Speaker Boehner dismissed, with the intention to have the field reconsidered for someone who can get to 218 within our conference.
Why does he stay on as Speaker for the time being longer than the end of October?
Speaker Boehner remains a Speaker until he formally steps down. Obviously, at this point, what we have is a candidate who very much magnanimously said he didn't believe he could unite the conference sufficiently, and he's taken himself out of the running. No other candidate came close to having the 200-plus votes that Kevin McCarthy had. Thank you.
Representative Darrell Issa there. We still have with us, I believe, our Nancy Cordes to help make sense of what we are hearing in this still unfolding situation. Nancy, a lot to talk about there. First of all, what did you make of what we heard Darrell Issa say, that he didn't necessarily think that Kevin McCarthy perhaps thought that he did not have the ability to get to 218?
That's very interesting, because the signals we had been getting was that he did think that he was going to be able to get there. It could be that when the House Freedom Caucus that I mentioned earlier, this group of very conservative members, announced that they were going to be, by and large, supporting Daniel Webster, that took 40 or so votes away from Kevin McCarthy. And then, there was sort of this insurgent challenge by Congressman Jason Chaffetz of Utah, who, while he didn't have enough votes, even he acknowledged, to outright win the Speaker's race, perhaps was taking enough votes away from Kevin McCarthy that it was basically going to make it impossible for McCarthy to get to 218 on the first ballot. Now, what happens in these votes is if no one gets to 218 the first time, you vote again. The lowest, the people who have the lowest amount of votes drop out. So eventually there is someone who gets a majority. But clearly that's not the way that Kevin McCarthy wanted to win this speaker's race. You want to go in a position of strength when you become speaker, because the job only gets harder from there. You have to make so many controversial calls. You want to feel like your members are behind you right when you take the gavel. And if he felt that he had lukewarm support from conservative members, that was not going to bode well for the future. You saw how that people had a lot of respect for Speaker Boehner, and they still tried to push him out because they felt that he wasn't sufficiently conservative. So I think what happened was that McCarthy saw the writing on the wall. And by the way, he's a former whip, and that's the person in the party who's responsible for counting votes and figuring out where members are on key votes. And so if anyone was able to count the votes and figure out just how much support he had, it's Kevin McCarthy.
So apparently we are learning that Donald Trump just praised the decision. But let me ask you this, Nancy, what does this tell us about the state of the Republican Party right now?
There's one GOP member who just told reporters that they're unmoored, that that they're really at a crossroads. And I think this shows the real debate that is going on within the party right now between members who say, look, Republicans control the House and the Senate. We should be having more victories. We should be holding our ground on things like spending and Planned Parenthood. And who feel that their leadership is too quick to compromise. And then there are other members who say, look, we live in the political reality that we can't get things done on our own. We do need Democratic votes. We do have a Democrat in the White House who will veto bills if he thinks that they don't line up with his ideology, and so we have to operate in the situation that we're in, and we have to compromise. And there really is that dichotomy in the House Republican Party, and you're seeing it in this breakdown right now. And the question is, who, if not Kevin McCarthy, who is it who can lead a party that is fractured in that way? Because it's a very young party. Something like 60% of the members in the House GOP conference have only come to Congress in the last 5 or 6 years or so. So when you're being the speaker is a tough job. You want someone with experience, but someone who has the confidence of their membership, and those are hard shoes to fill.
We heard Darrell Issa say just a few moments ago that as far as they know, that Kevin McCarthy is staying on as majority leader, and it's not clear who he might be throwing his support behind. What happens now, though, if you're Kevin McCarthy and you have just made this decision, as you said, hours after it seemed like all indications were you were in this race? What could his next step possibly be here?
Well, perhaps, he has determined that House Majority Leader, the number 2 position, is really, where his skills lie and where he is best utilized. One of McCarthy's strengths is that he has very good relationships with the rank and file. They like him. He helped to get a lot of them elected. He's a good fundraiser. So he does have a lot of strengths. But, when you're talking about a speaker, you, want someone who has a very clear policy agenda, a clear mastery of policy, someone who's going to be a fierce negotiator for your side, and also a fierce spokesperson for your side. And I think that there were concerns among House members that perhaps he lacked some of those skills. And he himself has not been in Congress all that long. He's in his 4th term, and compare that to someone like Speaker Boehner, who has been in Congress for 23 years, so had a lot of time to hone those skills before he became Speaker of the House.
And as you're speaking, Nancy, I see an email here from a colleague I know you know well, Walt Cronkite, has just emailed about what he has been seeing and hearing there, that Representative Fleming said that Kevin McCarthy went to the microphone and said something to the effect of, "I'm not the guy." And apparently he wasn't standing close enough to the microphone. It was hard to hear what he said. And we have Walt on the phone right now.